Will Tyon Grant-Foster suit up for Gonzaga or not? Today is the day we hopefully find out.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets that you can use all across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. Well, today is the day. Thursday, October 23rd is when Tyon Grant-Foster will have his preliminary injunction hearing. He has added an attorney with some serious experience battling the NCAA to his team for this hearing on Thursday. We're going to talk all about that, break down the situation, plus take a look at what Gonzaga's projected lineup and rotation might look like, both with and without Tyon Grant-Foster, as we await this update, hopefully coming very soon. And then we're going to close out the show, continuing our series talking about the best Mark Few era Zags from various cities, states, countries, continents. In this case, as we are talking Africa, 6 Zags born in Africa in the Mark Few era. We're going to talk about all of them to close out the show. But we start with the big news. Tyon Grant-Foster, preliminary injunction hearing set for Thursday at 3:30 p.m. in Spokane County. Grant-Foster will be repped by Carl Oreskovich, who is a civil rights attorney in Spokane, as well as Elliot Abrams. This recently came out. Theo Lawson of the Spokesman Review reported on this Wednesday morning. Elliot Abrams is a very well-known attorney that the NCAA would not like to see across from them anytime soon. Abrams has taken on the NCAA roughly 20 times in his career. He didn't specifically tell Theo how many times he's beaten the NCAA, but he said he is well over 500 against the governing body. A recent case of his that got some national attention for is Tez Walker, a wide receiver over at North Carolina, who was deemed ineligible by the NCAA. Walker got involved in the case, and the NCAA eventually changed their ruling, and Walker was able to play for the Tar Heels. Great track record. Really prominent person to bring onto Grant-Foster's case. They had to work some legalese in order to get him to be able to practice not only outside of the state of North Carolina, but across the entire country, but they were able to get it done. And the article that Theo wrote at the Spokesman did a really good job of detailing a lot of kind of what the case is about, what they're looking to get out of this preliminary injunction hearing specifically on Thursday, which is really what I want to focus on, because what the overall situation, for those who maybe need a quick primer, Tyon Grant-Foster committed to Gonzaga in May. In June was when Gonzaga first submitted a waiver for him to have eligibility for this upcoming season. They went back and forth basically for 3 months until October 17th, when they officially, the final request by Gonzaga was officially denied by the NCAA. That is when Tyon Grant-Foster filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. That lawsuit is still ongoing, but the preliminary injunction is an attempt to say, hey, if I cannot play this season while the lawsuit's going on, it doesn't really matter whether I win or not. The harm will have been done. So an injunction is for a judge to determine, yes, this is true. Not letting you participate would do, quote, irreparable harm. So we are going to let you participate while the lawsuit plays out. That is the general kind of baseline explanation for what is happening on Thursday. And the lawyers for Grant-Foster are optimistic. They are confident that they will get this injunction granted for Grant-Foster, and they're hoping to get it done soon. I think the timeline is an interesting part of this conversation. In fact, Abrams said specifically in a conversation with the Spokesman Review that they would like to get a judgment on Thursday, that they think it could happen the same day today, as most of you are listening to this show. His direct quote in this article says, I know we've put a lot of information in front of the judge. We'll put more information in front of the judge on Thursday, so there's certainly a chance it continues. But I think given the strength of the showing, the strength of the equities in our favor, there's also a good chance we get a ruling on Thursday. We're certainly hopeful we will. For Gonzaga, the main date that really has significance here is October 29th, a week from Wednesday, or a little less than a week, as most of you are listening to this on Thursday. That is the final day that winter sport athletes at Gonzaga can accept financial aid from the school. If there's not a ruling by that date, it's not a good sign for Grant-Foster and his ability to play for Gonzaga this upcoming season. But if there is a ruling by then, obviously it could be a ruling of no preliminary injunction, in which case Grant-Foster is almost certainly not going to play for Gonzaga, like the odds would drop astronomically, or the ruling is positive. If the ruling is positive, if the judge does grant a preliminary injunction, that means that Grant-Foster from that moment forward would immediately be eligible for Gonzaga. He would be allowed to compete while the lawsuit is ongoing. Now, there's some conversation about how quickly Gonzaga would get him involved in the mix. I don't think that you're seeing him starting and playing 30 minutes on November 3rd against Texas Southern, regardless of what happens today in this preliminary injunction hearing. I think that he's going to need to get ramped up, and it's going to take some time. I think already the damage has been done in the sense that Grant-Foster will not be able to play to the level and with the preparedness that he would have been able to play had this not dragged on for the entire summer the way that it did. But ultimately, Grant-Foster would suit up for Gonzaga if this injunction was granted to him on Thursday. The NCAA could appeal, and they may appeal. That totally could happen, but that process would probably take roughly a year. So an appeal doesn't really matter in the sense that if they're trying to appeal to prevent Grant-Foster from playing for Gonzaga, they're not going to be able to do that. They could attempt to get the appeal expedited, which is what happened in the Diego Pavia versus NCAA case, which was Pavia was the Vanderbilt quarterback who sued the NCAA saying that his JUCO years should not count against his eligibility. The NCAA eventually ruled in favor of that, or the NCAA eventually changed the rules temporarily to allow players who have JUCO credits to then have an extra year of eligibility, which is actually a huge part of this upcoming case again for Tyon Grant-Foster and potentially the injunction hearing as well. But ultimately, the NCAA, the judges did not expedite in this case where the NCAA attempted to get them to do so. So the odds of them doing so in this case are slim. All that to say, this feels like it's as complicated as all of this is. The basic explanation is pretty simple. If the judge grants Grant-Foster the preliminary injunction, he plays for Gonzaga pretty much the entire season. If the judge does not, he's likely not going to play. It is really pretty much that simple. There's not a whole, that is very likely how this goes. There are some other possibilities, some other things that could happen. It is possible, albeit pretty unlikely, that if the preliminary injunction is granted, the lawsuit continues, Tyon Grant-Foster loses the lawsuit, which I think he would ultimately just drop it eventually. The NCAA could attempt to determine that the injunction should not have been granted, pursue legal action in that case. And in that situation, there could be retaliatory action against Gonzaga. They could try to wipe away some of their wins, wipe away his stats. Again, this feels like a very, very unlikely situation to happen, but it is within the realm of possibilities. But ultimately, this is going to come down to pretty simple. Does the judge in Spokane County believe that Grant-Foster deserves an opportunity to play for Gonzaga while this lawsuit plays out with the NCAA or not? And we talked about the new addition to Grant-Foster's legal case, Elliot Abrams, who, as we mentioned, has a prolific history against the NCAA. Somebody else who will be in attendance at Tyon Grant-Foster's hearing on Thursday will be Mark Few. Mark Few is going to stay in Spokane and be part be there in support of Grant-Foster. You might be thinking, of course, why wouldn't Mark Few be there? Because this Thursday is also the same day as the WCC Media Day, and Mark Few is slated to be in Las Vegas, being interviewed by a handful of media members, including yours truly. And Mark Few is instead going to stay in Spokane with Grant-Foster and be there in support of him for this court case. Totally an unsurprising decision. I kind of assumed this was going to happen pretty much as soon as we found out the dates were going to be at the same time. So a bit of a bummer for folks hoping to hear from Mark Few again, including myself on Thursday. But Brian Michelson is going to be there in his place. Graham Ike and Braden Huff will also be there as well. So for my sake, for the show on Friday, you will get to hear interviews with Mike and Braden and Graham Ike as well. But Mark, Coach Few, instead going to be in Spokane supporting, hopefully, a key part of his small forward rotation this upcoming season. Let's talk about what that rotation might look like. What does the starting lineup look like if Grant-Foster does have his injunction granted? What does it look like if he does not? And what does the overall rotation look like? Who gets more playing time? Who loses playing time? We're going to break all of that down coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, a tool that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. And Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying around 2 phones or having to rely on a landline. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Folks, the college basketball season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll get $300 to use in bonus bets all across the app. When you use FanDuel, whether it's parlays, player props, even jumping in on the action live, it makes watching sports even more exciting since you've just got a little bit riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan, whether you love deep diving into the stats, FanDuel makes that game day experience so much better. And if you're somebody who likes to read into betting lines, as potentially giving you an indication about something like, I don't know, Tyon Grant-Foster, the Zags remain at plus 3,500 to win the national championship. Those odds have not changed over the last couple of weeks. If you like those odds, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to get started by downloading the FanDuel app today. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we're still talking Tyon Grant-Foster as he awaits his preliminary injunction hearing on Thursday, 3:30 p.m. in Spokane County. Less than 2 weeks until the start of the Gonzaga basketball season officially on November 3rd in Spokane against Texas Southern. And what I want to do now is take a look at what I project the rotation and lineups to look like with or without Grant-Foster, because we don't quite know yet, but we're expecting to find out very soon if Grant-Foster is going to suit up for the team or not. But what we do know is that even if he does, even if he is granted eligibility, even if by the time you're listening to this, that has already happened, the odds of Grant-Foster playing the role that we expected him to play back in late May or June or July or even August or even September has changed because he has spent so little time around this team. He has not had the opportunity to fully dive into the ins and outs of Gonzaga's offense, to run it in simulated situations in practices, to understand his teammates, what they like to do. All of the nuances that make playing basketball much easier are things that Grant-Foster is not only behind, but significantly behind on through no fault of his own, which is part of the immense frustration around this entire situation. But what we know is that Grant-Foster is not going to just step into a 32 minute per game role. I'm not sure he ever was going to have that role, but now the odds of that are incredibly slim. Maybe as the year goes on, his playing time ticks up gradually. Maybe he starts on the bench and ends up entering the starting lineup by the middle of the season, late in the season. That could happen. But the day one lineups for Gonzaga are not going to be what they would have been had Grant-Foster's initial waiver request been approved back in June. So what I did is I laid out my projected starting 5 with Tyon Grant-Foster, as well as my projected minutes per game for all the players I expect to be in the rotation. And then I've done the same thing if Tyon Grant-Foster does not get his injunction granted and is no longer able to play for Gonzaga this year. We'll start with Tyon Grant-Foster. I still don't think Grant-Foster starts. I think Steele Venters is going to be the starting 3 on Monday, November 3rd, regardless of what happens with Grant-Foster today. So my starting lineup projection with Tyon Grant-Foster is Graham Ike, Braden Huff, Steele Venters, Adam Miller, and Braden Smith. I have all those guys playing a good amount of minutes. I have Ike at 26, Huff at 25, Miller also at 25, Braden Smith leading the way at 30 minutes per game, and then Venters only at 20 minutes, which feels a little low. But I think that if Grant-Foster is eligible and Venters is obviously going to be a big part of the team, I think you see those minutes scaled back a little bit, especially early on where they're kind of trying to get both those guys acclimated, get Venters back into regular game shape and kind of make sure that he's doing fine health-wise, get Grant-Foster kind of back into game shape as well, and also just acclimated to the offense. So Venters starting, but playing 20 minutes a game. I have Grant-Foster coming off the bench playing 22 minutes per game, so more or less splitting time with Steele Venters. Diani at 12 minutes a game, same with Mario St-Superi, also at 12 minutes a game. Jalen Worley at 17 minutes per game. Emmanuel Inocente at 10 minutes per game, and then there was 1 minute left over, so that would go to Davis Fogel. I know Davis Fogel looked great on Sunday, but in a reality where Grant-Foster is eligible and contributing to this team, Davis Fogel's number 11 in the rotation. And if, again, I said this on the Davis Fogel preview episode earlier this week, if you think he deserves to play more, find me where those minutes come from, because I'm not sure who else on this spot is going to play less than what we already have laid out in this specific situation. I've also laid it out via depth chart positionally. Gonzaga plays borderline positionless basketball, so I'm not sure how much this matters. It just kind of helped me be able to articulate it, so I'll go through it here. There's 40 minutes every game, 40 minutes at all 5 positions. So at center, Ike plays 26 minutes at the 5. Diani plays 12 minutes at the 5. There's 2 minutes left over, so we'll just give those to Braden Huff. Braden Huff plays 23 of his 25 minutes at the 4. Jalen Worley playing 17 minutes per game. That's the rest of the minutes at the 4. So I'm expecting a reality where Grant-Foster is playing for this team. I'm expecting Worley pretty much all of his minutes to come at power forward. Small forward, Venters plays 18 at the 3, and Grant-Foster plays 22 at the 3. So those two guys split all the minutes there. Shooting guard is where you get a bunch of different guys. Miller plays 25 minutes. Inocente plays 10 minutes. Venters and Mario each play 2 minutes there. And then Fogel's 1 minute goes there as well. And then at point guard, Braden Smith plays 10 minutes. And then Braden Smith plays 30 minutes. Mario plays 10 minutes. So Mario's playing mostly at the 1, but playing a little bit at the 2. And then Venters playing a little bit of minutes at the 2 as well. Without Tyon Grant-Foster, the main change is an uptick in playing time for Steele Venters, as you would expect, an uptick in playing time for Emmanuel Inocente, as you would expect. Those are the main changes. There's a little bit more playing time for Worley, a little bit more playing time for the other guards, a little bit more playing time for Fogel, potentially, although I still think he'd be outside of the rotation in this situation. I think he would be more likely to compete 4 minutes in the rotation, but I still think that he would be outside of it, even if Tyon Grant-Foster does, in fact, or is not able to play for Gonzaga this year. So again, we'll just go through it we'll go through it by the 5 positions here. Nothing changes in the front court. 26 minutes from Ike at the 5. Diani plays 12. Huff plays 2. Power forward, Huff plays 23. Worley plays 17. None of that changes. Small forward, all 25 minutes that I have Steele Venters playing for Gonzaga in this situation would come at the small forward position. Emmanuel Inocente would give you 7 minutes at small forward. That adds up to 32. Jalen Worley gives you 5 minutes at the 3. That gives you 37. And then Davis Fogel plays 3 minutes to get you to 40. Obviously, every game is not going to go exactly like this, but this is just a kind of a blueprint outline for how those minutes could be distributed for this team in this situation. Shooting guard's going to look pretty similar. Adam Miller's playing 27 minutes now, a little bit more than he was previously. Inocente's playing 10 minutes at the 2, and then Mario's playing 3 minutes at the 2. Braden Smith's playing 31 minutes. Mario's playing 9 minutes at the 1 to get you to 40 minutes there. So not a ton of changes. The most notable things would be, again, an uptick in playing time for Venters, an uptick in playing time for Inocente, who's the biggest beneficiary of no Tyon Grant-Foster, and I think justifiably so. Inocente is a very good defensive on-ball player, and while Grant-Foster is obviously known mostly for his ability to score and the 20 points per game that he put up at Grand Canyon 2 years ago, he's also a really lengthy, disruptive defensive player. And I think not having Grant-Foster would you get more playing time from Venters because of his offensive ability, but you'd also get more playing time for Inocente because of his defensive ability to sort of kind of counteract the fact that Grant-Foster is somebody who contributes on both ends of the ball. And missing him means that you don't have, that you're weaker offensively and defensively. So you need to uptick the playing time for guys who can contribute on both sides of the ball. Inocente doesn't contribute much offensively. Venters does not contribute much defensively. So you kind of need to bump both those guys. Worley gets a little bit of a bump as well. He's obviously more defensive focused, but certainly can contribute offensively as well. Well, folks, moving on, closing out the show, continuing the series we started over 2 months ago, looking at the best Mark Few era Zags from different states, countries, continents. Today, we're talking Zags born in Africa. Ismaila Diani, one of 6 that we're going to discuss to close out the show, coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. And Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every make and model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like college basketball players, Mazda sweats every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from our conversation about the preliminary injunction hearing taking place today in Spokane for Tyon Grant-Foster, to instead look at another group of the best Mark Few era Zags from a various place. We've done 15 of these so far. I think this is number 16. We've talked about a bunch of states: Oregon, Washington, Colorado, California, Minnesota, Texas, Nevada, etc., etc. We've also talked about the best Gonzaga players from Canada, from France, from Eastern Europe, and from Western Europe. Today, we are moving on to a full continent, talking about the best Zags from Africa in the Mark Few era. This does include a couple of guys. For those of you who listened to the Canada episode a couple weeks ago, we did not talk about 2 players that are Canadian citizens. That would be Mengistu Arap and Bol Kong. We chose to omit them from that show because we wanted to talk about them here since they were both born in African countries. That also applies to Ismaila Diani, who we are talking about today, who could have been considered in the show in Western Europe for Spain because he played for Real Madrid, grew up in Spain, but he was born in Senegal. So we're going to talk about him here. Obviously, Diani is the current Zag on the roster. So placing him was a bit difficult because statistically, what he's done up to this point in his Gonzaga career does not have him near the top of this list. But frankly, one good season could vault him all the way to the very top. Similarly, another player that we will talk about, I won't give away who it is, but I'll say this. I am judging these players entirely by what they did in a Gonzaga uniform. So we will not talk about their performances, say, at other programs coached by former Gonzaga coaches who maybe have moved on and brought said player with them. So even though this player is clearly the best player on this list, he actually finds himself near the bottom of this list because of what we're only judging based on what they did in that Gonzaga uniform. So we're going to kick it off. No more of those caveats here. We're starting with the oldest Zag on this list, Abdullahi Kuso. Kuso from Nigeria, spent 2 years at Gonzaga, 2006 and 2007. He actually began his college career at Tallahassee Community College in Florida, but then spent those 2 years in Spokane with the Zags. Played 67 games, started 28 of them, averaged about 15 minutes, 5.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and just over a block per game. Very efficient scorer, 56% from the field for his career. He was 7th in the WCC in blocks and blocks per game in each of his 2 seasons in a Gonzaga uniform. Kuso had a very lengthy professional career. He finished his time at Gonzaga in 2008, but was actually playing professionally all the way up until 2021. Most of his professional career spent in Japan, although he played a couple of other places as well. Kuso, very talented player for a couple of years in Spokane, a very, very good player, and somebody that I think kind of gets lost in the Gonzaga basketball history at this point, with 25 plus years of NCAA tournament teams, it's easy for a few guys to get kind of missed in the shuffle. But Kuso was very much a good player, and the kind of player that I like reminiscing about when doing this kind of series, which is why I'm happy to be able to talk about him here. Next up on the list from the Ivory Coast is Guy Landry Eddy. Guy Landry Eddy also spent 2 years at Gonzaga after starting his career at a junior college. In Eddy's case, he was at Midland Junior College in Texas, played 56 games in a Gonzaga uniform, started 30 of them, averaged about 4 points, a little over 2 rebounds, and about 14 minutes per game. As a freshman, or I guess as a junior for Gonzaga, Eddy averaged 5.5 points in 17 minutes per game. But then as a senior, his playing time dropped to only 11 minutes per game and 3 points. He lost his starting job that senior year to one of the best stories in Gonzaga basketball history, which is the great Mike Hart, who walked onto the team, gradually saw his playing time increase until his senior year, when he, as we just said, stepped into the starting lineup for a team that eventually became Gonzaga's first ever number one ranked team in the country. Guy Landry Eddy, a part of that team, struggled a little bit. Very, very good athlete. I loved watching Guy when I was in college because he could throw down monster dunks at any given time. A super athlete who just never quite was able to rein it in on a consistent basis. Hart was a better fit in that starting lineup because of what he brought defensively and on the glass. And so that ended up being the case for Eddy to lose his playing time. No shame in still being a rotation player for the number one team in the country, which ended up being the case for Guy Landry Eddy. Long pro career as well, continuing, in fact, as he is playing for the Calgary Surge in Canada right now. Next up on this list, another guy from my time as a student at Gonzaga, Mengistu Arap from Sudan, one of those players who very much could have been included on the list of Canadians as well, but he was technically born in Sudan. Spent 2 years at Gonzaga from 2009 to 2011 before transferring, sitting out a year, and then playing 2 seasons at Indiana State with the Sycamores. While at Gonzaga, Arap played in 59 games, started 8 of them, played about 14 minutes a game, 4 points, 3.5 rebounds. You'll notice the stats for Kuso, Landry Eddy, and Arap, all very similar. All played 2 years, all played a similar amount of games, all average a similar amount of points and rebounds per game in their career. Arap was much better early in his career, in his sophomore season. Was a decent player as a freshman. As a sophomore, averaged about 5 points, 3 boards, shot 37% from 3 in close to 16 minutes per game. Had a few really good performances, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 of 5 from 3 in a road game against Notre Dame. He also had 15 points and 4 rebounds on 7 of 8 shooting against Marquette in that same year. But Arap, after those 2 years, hits the transfer portal. It was not called the transfer portal, but transfers after that year. There was a lot of free Manny. That became a popular refrain from the Gonzaga crowd at the time, wanted to see more playing time for Arap. It didn't happen in his second year, at least not to the level he wanted. So he transfers, he goes to Indiana State, and he was really good for the Sycamores. Spent 2 years playing for them, averaged 11.5 points, 5 rebounds, and about 29 minutes per game. Very, very talented player, just never quite found that role at Gonzaga. Ended up playing professionally a handful of different places, including Sweden and Germany. Next up, similar era. Once again, we're talking Bol Kong, another player like Arap, who could have been on the Canadian list, who was born in Sudan but migrated to Canada. He was there, I think, like at age 5 or age 6 was when he first moved to Canada, has dual citizenship now. Spent just 1 year at Gonzaga in the 2009-2010 season. He actually began at Douglas, which was a school in Canada, before coming stateside to play for Gonzaga. Appeared in 31 games. His lone season in Spokane averaged 12.5 minutes, 4.5 points, 1.5 rebounds. Very efficient scorer, 50% on his twos, 42% from 3. But again, just the 1 year for Bol in Spokane. He ended up only ever playing 1 year anywhere. He started at Douglas in Canada, then played 1 year at Gonzaga, then played 1 year at NAIT, then played 1 year at St. Francis Xavier, neither of those schools at the Division I level. Just somebody who ended up moving around a lot, but was a decent role player for Gonzaga the 1 year that he was here. He also played professionally for the Ottawa Skyhawks in Canada as well. 2 more names to get to. You probably know what the 2 names are here. First up is Ismaila Diani. Like I mentioned, Ismaila Diani with 1 big year. If he does what I think he's capable of doing this year as Gonzaga's backup center, he probably moves all the way up to maybe number 1, maybe number 2 behind Kuso. but he's already on track to be the best player on this list before too long. Spent 1 year at Gonzaga so far, of course, 10 games, 6.5 minutes per game, 3.5 points, 1.8 rebounds. He had that monster game against Santa Clara, 9 points, 4 boards on 4 of 4 shooting in 18 minutes. We know what he is capable of. We saw the glimpses last year. We saw some glimpses at craziness. We saw some glimpses in the exhibition game against Northwest. He's still behind two of the best bigs in all of college basketball in Graham Ike and Braden Huff, but he is projected to play a bigger role. As you heard earlier in the show, I project him to play about 12 minutes per game this year. We'll see if he's able to play a little bit more than that. If it's scaled back, I think it'll depend on foul trouble, various other things, but he's in line for a bigger role this year and should put himself near the top of this conversation before too long. Diani was born in Senegal, but grew up in Spain playing for Real Madrid in the youth leagues. But again, born in Senegal, so we are counting him here. Same with Oumar Ballo, our final player on this list here. Again, kind of gave away who this was going to be here. Ballo, born in Mali, but grew up playing in Spain, similar to Ismaila Diani. Redshirted at Gonzaga in the 2019-20 season, and then just played 1 year with the Zags in 2020-21. Appeared in 24 games in a Gonzaga uniform, averaged just 6 minutes, 2.5 points, 1.5 boards. He was on the WCC all-freshman team. He did have a monster performance against what is now called Utah Tech, which was then called Dixie State. 17 points, 5 boards, 2 steals, 6 of 6 shooting against them in that game. So again, somewhat similar to Diani. Didn't play a ton, but had one really monster performance. For Ballo, it was a wrist injury that limited him to not being able to play in as many games as he wanted to. And he was also just buried on a really ridiculously deep roster for Gonzaga. This is the team that did not lose a game until they lost to Baylor in the national championship. This team had Drew Timme, they had Anton Watson, they had Corey Kispert playing the floor, they had Julian Strother off the bench, they had Ben Gregg off the bench as well. Ballo was buried on a team with a tremendous amount of front court talent. After that year, Tommy Lloyd took the head coaching job at the University of Arizona, and Ballo, who Tommy had recruited extensively to Gonzaga, who he had known since he was 16 years old. Ballo followed Tommy Lloyd to Arizona, played the next year kind of coming off the bench, and then exploded. Ended up becoming a 2-time all Pac-12 first teamer, Pac-12 most improved player award, Pac-12 all defense, ended up finishing his career at Indiana after earning a cool $1 million in the transfer portal, goes to play for the Hoosiers, averages 13 points, 9 boards for them, now playing professionally after what ended up becoming an incredibly decorated and prolific collegiate career, very clearly the best collegiate career of anybody on this list, but his performance at Gonzaga just because he did not get the opportunity, it just was not there. So he finds himself at the bottom of the list here, despite being a player who obviously had a very, very successful collegiate career. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners. Like I said, we'll be back with the show on Friday. It's going to be an interview with Brian Michelson, Graham Ike, and Braden Huff. We may have some other interviews scattered throughout the WCC Media Day as well. Hopefully we'll have an update on the Tyon Grant-Foster situation to talk about as well. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.